Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hockey fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike here. Now arrived at my train of thought. It's time to talk about the NHL Power Rankings, and we can kind of see where a lot of teams are, especially the teams in the zombie tier and the title tier. There's really not a lot of movement here, so this may be a little quicker than what you guys have been used to over the last few weeks. But let's not waste any more time and get to business in Fulton, Kentucky with the zombie tier. Vancouver, status quo continues. Yeah, the Canucks are still really bad. They have struggled continuously. They may be next to last in goals, but they're also last in goals allowed. Yeah, that's a good way to end up at the bottom of this tier. They have stayed there consistently the entire season and probably need to blow things up even more so than they already have as it is. They're the only team in the NHL with less than 50 points on the season. Yeah, it's kind of bad, and your negative 73 goal differential will do that. That explains a lot. The only team that they have scored more than is Calgary, stuck on train. I say this because part of Calgary's road trip this week takes them to Acela country. For those who may not know what Acela country means, what I mean by that, it is the Acela line on Amtrak. It is where you you can start as north as Boston and you go as south as Washington, D.C. Every major city in between that area, you can hit. You would hit Philly. You would hit New York, obviously. More on that later. You would hit Newark. You would hit Baltimore. You would hit Wilmington, Delaware. You would hit a lot of different places on the Acela line, and you can do so on these really, really nice trains that you see here. So I think with Calgary, they had to go face the Capitals, and they got a touchdown with the extra point put on them. That's for the NFL purposes. And they placed the Rangers, and they got another four-piece combo put on their heads. That's not great. And now they go and see New Jersey, which we'll see. New Jersey's in their peer group. Well, technically the Rangers are too, but yeah, we'll see if Calgary can prevent more goals from happening and or score any, because they hadn't scored since the second period of the Capitals game, and then they've given up, as you can tell, 11 unanswered. That's not great. Chicago, PCA is good. Yep, Pete Crow Armstrong get 2 bombs in the game against Italy, and though the game was horribly mismanaged by Mark DeRosa, the American team will move on thanks to Italy. Salute to Aaron Nola for that. Oh, right, you're thinking of the Blackhawks. At least there's Bertuzzi and Bedard. Those 2 guys are doing their parts, and unfortunately, no one else really is. They're not getting any more scoring, really, or at least more consistent scoring from anybody else on the ice. Chicago's not. So, yeah, they're going to be bottom 10 in scoring and bottom 10 in goals allowed also. That doesn't help either. So it's been another rough season, but at least the Cubs may be pretty good. At least there's that. And the White Sox won't be completely awful. And it's on the board that Chicago finishes in 4th place in the AL Central. Good. There's progress being made on the South side. At least there's that. St. Louis, stand and deliver. This is not a call to arms for the Blues. This is about NXT Stand and Deliver coming up in a couple of weeks, which should be a really good show. That's their signature show every year. I'm a little surprised it's not on WrestleMania weekend, but that's their signature show. And it's going to be in St. Louis this year. It's going to be pretty entertaining. We'll see if either the current champions, Joe Hendry, or the Vanity Project are the tag champions, or we got the North American champion and Miles Bourne, who looks like a mini Randy Orton, kind of, sort of, and JC Jane, who's the women's champion, has been a dominant women's champion over the last year for 2 reigns, and the North American champion on the women's side of it in the form of Tatum Paxley, who is now the second woman to hold both championships in NXT, singles championships for the women in NXT. We'll see if any of these champions will get to stand and deliver, and or will be able to defend their titles at said pay-per-view, or PLE, or Peacock events, because they're still on Peacock. Oh, and the Blues are still bad, even though, to be fair to St. Louis, over the last 8 days, they are 3-1. That's pretty good. That's not bad. One of these wins being a shutout 4-0 win against Anaheim. All right, good stuff. The Blues are still terrible, but this is a good run of form over the last week. It may hurt them in terms of lottery balls, but at the very least, it's a pretty solid week for St. Louis. New York Rangers. Mika owns XMA. And by XMA, I mean Xfinity Mobile Arena. Mika Zibanejad has been absolutely ridiculous against the Flyers in his career, and especially at Xfinity Mobile Arena, where he bagged another 2 goals, and this was part of a dominant Ranger win over the Flyers. And to be honest, this has been another really good year for the Rangers against the Flyers. They went 3-1 against the Orange and the Black. I don't like that at all, but it's a thing. It really happens. And it was a part of a good week for the Rangers, actually. They shut out the Flames, as I mentioned before, and though they got waxed by the Devils, they did destroy the Maple Leafs. So 3 out of 4 ain't bad. It's not bad at all. They will go to Winnipeg tonight, but again, they are still really terrible and the worst team in the Eastern Conference by record, but by points percentage, also by points. But still, it's a good week for a very terrible team. I will say that about the Rangers. Toronto, Jays and Raptors. Those 2 teams are going to the playoffs in their respective sports in theory. Toronto's currently there, at least in the NBA, and the Blue Jays are obviously a pitch away, literally, from winning the World Series this past year. As for the Maple Leafs, do you really want to talk about them? Unless you're talking about Dangle's podcast, and last Saturday was hilarious. But it's a brutal run. It's a brutal run of form when it comes to the Maple Leafs. They're the only team in the NHL to not have a win since the winter break. They've lost 8 straight. And of the 8, 5 of them really weren't that competitive. Let's be really honest here. 2 of them were shootout losses to the Devils and the Flyers. And the Canadiens lost 3-1. Okay, fine. They were outshot badly. But it's not a really good look for a Maple Leafs team that a lot of us have seen as Stanley Cup contenders for the last decade or so. That playoff streak's going to end this year, and they're going to have a real high pick. And if they don't, it goes to Boston. Oh, that's not great. That's got to be a top 6 pick, by the way, for the Maple Leafs to even keep it. And if it's not, it goes to their ops in Boston, and that's not great. Winnipeg, a good week. Like most of these teams in this part of the power rankings, they had a pretty solid week of getting some wins and getting some confidence up. That's a good thing. Before they lost to Anaheim, they actually had 3 straight wins. One of them against Tampa Bay Lightning. I recommend that. The Lightning are a really good team. You will see them much later in these power rankings. Good look on Winnipeg's part as they try to salvage what's been a disastrous season. Even though Connor Hellebuyck is still very, very good. As we've seen in the Olympics, he's still one of the best goalies on the planet, and maybe the best goalie on the planet when he is at his very best. He does have a hard trophy to prove that particular point. Good on you, Winnipeg, for winning some games last week. And New Jersey, goalless week. Yes, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, the Devils haven't played since Sunday. Well, yeah, that's true. They had not played since Sunday, and technically the Devils have not allowed a goal since then, which is good. Good on New Jersey for that, I guess. Maybe that's the best thing for them, is to just not play since Sunday. They also, unfortunately, haven't scored since the Rangers game last Saturday because they got shut out by the Red Wings. So that's also a double-edged sword, if you will. Maybe they'll score a goal or 2 against the Flames, even though Dustin Wolf is a really good goalie. So that may not happen either. To go 5 days without scoring a goal, that's not great. I wouldn't recommend it. And maybe the Devils probably should do that to tank. But that's something that they're going to have to figure out. So a game that may be potentially hot between the Flames and the Devils. Will they sin or will they score? I guess we'll see. Let's go to Birmingham, Alabama for the Monkeys Paws here. Nashville. Titans make moves. Their neighbors in Tennessee and new stadium people in Nashville with the Titans are making some decent moves. I like the move for Wandale Robinson. You actually give Cam Ward some help with a, I think, bona fide number 2 receiver. We'll see if they can get a number 1 somewhere, anywhere in the draft, and or if Calvin Ridley can actually live up to that claim. They traded for Solomon Thomas, was an interesting get, and they also are kind of sort of building their roster out because they needed to do that and spend some of that money that they had because they had a whole lot of cap space to play with. Oh, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, why aren't you talking about the Predators? Well, there's not really much to say about Nashville. They aren't that great of a team. They went kind of basic. They were 4-4-2 over the last 10 games, and their week was kind of a mixed bag, if you will. They beat Boston, which I recommend that, and they beat Seattle, which is also not terrible. No shame against Buffalo. Okay, cool. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad in the last 3 games. Not bad stuff there. So maybe there is a little bit more to talk about than I expected. Well, they'll beat Vancouver in theory, right? They play tonight. We'll see them if they play in Vancouver in one of those while you were sleeping kind of games. They start at 10. San Jose, still in race. And pretty much from here on, everybody else here is still relatively in the race, especially if you're in the Western Conference. If you're in the East, it gets a little bit wonky. But in the Western Conference, pretty much every Western team from here on in is in the race for the Stanley Cup playoffs because they're so jammed. In the case of the Sharks, yeah, they are fun to watch, entertaining, exciting, all these things. Yet they're still out of the playoff race, and they're going to have to deal with their Ops and the Kings to get there. So those are going to be some important games. They have an important one tonight with Boston. Ooh, that's going to be a challenge for the Sharks and Celebrini and Will Smith and company. Their last week has been, again, actually in their case, not a mixed bag at all, just losses. They've lost 3 straight. And it's to the Blues, the Islanders, and the Sabres. The latter two you can kind of understand and work with here. The Islanders was overtime. But, this has not been a great week. At least the Blues game went to overtime, too. But it's not been a great week for the Sharks and a team that needs to stack some wins. Going to Boston and Montreal as your next 2 games to try to get said wins is not something that's great or easy. Good luck, San Jose. You'll need a lot of it. Speaking of the California teams and the Kings, LA is next. The Acela train. I mentioned this with Calgary, when it came to the Acela train, and a lot of their games over the next week or so, or a couple of their games in a row, if you will, have to do with said train. Well, the Kings are going to have to deal with it in spades. I'll explain. The LA Kings are going to start in Boston. And they lost 2-1. They lost 2-1 in overtime on Tuesday. Okay, that happens. Cool. I didn't mention the Islanders part, but yes, they do play the Islanders. And then they play the Devils, and then they play the Rangers. They do play the Flyers as well, but that Flyers game's out in Los Angeles. The Flyers obviously have something to do with the Acela train as well, but that's a game that's out in LA. That's an entirely different system. In any event, the Kings are going to have to probably make some hay, especially against the Devils and Rangers, to keep up in this playoff race and keep their Ops in San Jose out of said playoffs. Because that's really where the fight is right now amongst the wildcard teams in said conference. The Kings and the Sharks are both out, but both out by a point. Well, the Kings are tied with Seattle for the last spot. So they may have to fight each other just to get into the playoffs, and or Seattle, for that matter, to get into the dance. We'll see if they're going to be successful in doing so. And part of this step will be to deal with the Acela train. Florida. Dolphins sign Willis. This is a pretty solid, affordable deal. Considering the Jets were willing to give him apparently $30 to $40 million a year, ooh, that's a pretty good deal. That's a pretty solid deal for the Dolphins to sign Malik Willis and to make some depth signings, especially in the cornerback room, to try to fill out the roster. I think this is what a lot of this free agency is going to be honest. The Dolphins not making any major moves, but moves to say, okay, we're going to fill some depth pieces, try to fill out a 53 that's relatively cheap, and they're going to have to, because this roster needs to be affordable for this year, because next year everything clears up cap-wise for the most part. Also, the Florida Panthers are continuing their gap year. Okay, fine. I understood. I'm not really tripping about the Panthers this year. They obviously traded some of their futures to make the runs that they did. I think we're all okay with this. They have won their last 2 games, both of which against the Red Wings, which is good in that realm. That's a good look. But obviously, the Panthers' season is not going so well, and it does feel like a gap year for Florida. And that's okay. Florida can live with the gap year and then maybe come back and try to win their 3rd cup in 4 years next year when they're all healthy and ready to roll. This is for the best, Panthers. It's for the best. Seattle, staying alive. Like the 2 California teams I've already mentioned, the Kraken are in a similar spot. They have to hold on to the playoffs, And in their case, they have not had a great week. They've lost 3 straight. They have looked kind of sort of rough in net at times. I mean, the 7-piece by Ottawa will confirm this. And giving them 4 to Nashville is not recommended. Losing to the Blues at all is not recommended, but these things happen. And the Kraken have to get back on track and before they get past in, not Jeff Passan, the baseball reporter, but they have to get things back on track as soon as humanly possible. And if they don't, they're in some real trouble of missing the postseason because those 2 Cali teams are coming for them in theory. But where are they going? Well, they're going home. That's the good news. The bad news is Colorado's the opponent tonight. And while you were sleeping, that could be pretty rough. The Avalanche are kind of a well-oiled machine and a snowball rolling down a mountain. That's not great, Seattle. Good luck with dealing with that. And if it gets to the water, good luck dealing with the temperatures that may come with them. Vegas. Crosby's still there. The Matt Crosby situation is wild. I don't know if y'all have seen this. It's been the major news of the day, or one of the major pieces of news, with Max Crosby getting traded to Baltimore, and Baltimore rescinding the trade because he failed a physical, and or Baltimore got cold feet at the altar. It's not great. And now he's still a Raider for now, in a situation where the Raiders probably didn't really want to trade him. And now I guess the question is simple: what will they do? How did the Raiders possibly become cap compliant? Because I've heard nothing about the Raiders being otherwise. And they honored all their deals there. They didn't really release anybody. So the Raiders improved their defense and got their best player back. So I guess that's a good thing. Oh, and you're probably wondering about the Golden Knights at this point. And they, too, have struggled. They've lost 3 straight. It has not been a great week for Vegas. Although, the teams they lost to, there's no shame in losing to them. Minnesota, Edmonton, and Dallas. Those are 3 legitimately great teams. And all 3 games were competitive. It's not like they were terrible in any of these 3 games. They just happened to lose them in regulation. So you get nothing out of it. We'll see what they do against Pittsburgh tonight. And Vegas is still a very good hockey team. They're going to fight somebody to the death in round 1 of the playoffs. But it's not been the greatest week. Vegas is going to need to stack some wins to get home ice advantage in what could be a potential rematch. As of now, they would be playing Edmonton, and they are tied with the Oilers for the second seed in the Pacific Division portion of the playoffs. They aren't too far out from the division lead, though. Anaheim's only a few points out, but they're going to have to stack some wins up to get there. That loss to Edmonton may come back to bite them eventually. We shall see. Washington, 1 or 7? That's the goal total that they've had over the last 3 games here. It's either been 1 goal or it's been 7. The Capitals last night, for example, scored the 4th goal against the Flyers. They gave up the next 4. I'm okay with this personally as a Flyers fan, but it's not great. It did not go well for the Capitals. And in the other games that the Capitals have played in the last week or so, they scored 7 against the Flames, as I mentioned before. Then they only scored 1 against Boston prior to this. Not great. 1 or 7. That's kind of where the Capitals have been at. At least the Commanders signed some edge rushers. Well, at least there's that. I mean, that's pretty good. They also go to Buffalo, Washington does, this weekend, or tonight, actually. This weekend, they get Boston at home and what's a very sizable matchup between the most northern point of the Acela train and the most southern point of it, where you could literally take the train from TD Garden and take it down to Union Station in Washington and take a short walk over to Capital One Arena and actually watch the game. So that's some good travel stuff. I have been on the Acela train a few times, let it be known. I do enjoy it. I have to ride the new one, though. I've never had the chance to get on the new Acelas. I'm going to do that at some point this spring. That is the play. That is the plan, and that's how we're going to move. But one place I don't need to take the Acela train over to anyway, is Philadelphia. That is home. Better and healthier. The Flyers have played better since the Olympic break. They have legitimately been a pretty solid team since that break. And they're also getting healthier, with Travis Konechny and Nick Seeler being back. The trade deadline was not fruitful for the Orange and Black like it's been in years past, where the Flyers have downright fleeced some teams. Toronto being one of the victims of the fleecing, where you gave up a first for Scott Lawton and got nowhere near the return back and trading him away not even a year later. That's not recommended, but it happened. Anyway, the Flyers, when not playing the Rangers, have actually played really well. over the last few weeks, and against the Capitals, but they got their lick back last night, as I just mentioned. Good on the Flyers for that. And for Philly, getting it together to some degree is a good look, despite a very awful January. January really might have sunk this team. Even if January were halfway decent, the Flyers would probably be in the playoffs at this moment in time. That's kind of where things are with Philly and the postseason. Because as of now, they're still down by 6 points in terms of getting in the last wildcard spot. And that's a lot of it based on a terrible January. They're actually down 7 points to Boston for said wildcard spot. And before the division's even harder to get, it's 8 points. And what may be the hardest thing of all for the Flyers to deal with is the fact that their next game is against Minnesota. Minnesota's really, really good. We'll see what the Flyers can keep up tonight. Let's keep up with the Wilmington, Delaware playoff tier. Edmonton, one playoff preview. Like I just mentioned, Edmonton faced the Golden Knights earlier this week, and they ended up getting the job done. They went on the road. Lots of McDavid and Draisaitl doing McDavid and Draisaitl things, because of course they did. And Edmonton has stayed very steady, to be honest, over the last little bit. They've gone 4-6, okay, fine, but they won 2 straight. One of them against the Golden Knights, and the other one against the Avalanche in a very hard environment to win. The Avalanche don't lose at regulation at home at all this year. Ironically, the Flyers are one of those teams that actually claim a win in said manner. But Edmonton got the latest one and the last one. And Edmonton's now going to be tested even further because they play the Stars tonight in a very good matchup and a very good test for McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, and the crew in oil country. They go to Dallas, though, where there's a lot of oil there, too. I guess that there's oil country there in America. As a Western Conference finals rematch, if you will, because we've seen that a few times the last couple years. We'll see if Edmonton can keep this momentum rolling and get their 3rd straight win and stay ahead of Vegas when it comes to hosting in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Because that could be another fun matchup if they may run it back. Utah, still good, but the run of form for the Mammoth have been a little disappointing. They've lost 2 straight. It has not looked great or awesome recently. They got waxed by the Wild. A lot of teams will do that, but that's not great. Losing to the Blackhawks is something I don't recommend. I don't really think that's a good look. But losing those 2 straight, not looking awesome. It's not. At least they got a point out of the Blackhawks game. And it did beat Columbus, which that is good. We could rock with that. They got to get some things together, but Utah's looking like a decent playoff contender at the very least. Clayton Keller and company doing this thing, and the Mammoth still have a real shot of getting to the postseason. They are currently in it right now amongst the new kids, them in Seattle, and they're in okay shape. Unfortunately for them, they're in the wrong division at the wrong time. They're not going to be able to get to the safe line that is 2nd or 3rd in the Central because those 3 behemoths are going to stay as such. But other than that, they're in relatively good shape. They just have to keep things going, and we'll see if they do. And we'll see what happens this evening for their game. I think they play Chicago tonight. We'll see what happens there. Ottawa, playing better. Up until last night's loss to the Canadiens, they had won 3 straight, and it looked like they were getting it together. They probably should have beaten Edmonton last Tuesday as well, but the Senators, at the very least, looked a little bit better over the last week or so. Good on Ottawa for that. And like the Flyers and a couple other teams I've mentioned in the East, it's going to be kind of hard to get into the playoffs considering their logjam. They have it a little easier. They're only 5 points down as opposed to the Flyers and Capitals 7, but it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough to try to get into the postseason with another team to kind of jump over that I have not mentioned yet, and I will mention somewhere in this tier. Where will I mention them? We will see. Anaheim, Ontario opponents. Speaking of Ottawa, that's going to be the next opponent for the Senators is the Ducks. And then the Ducks also play the Maple Leafs. And they're going to, as Anaheim has taken over the Pacific lead, and they played relatively well. Actually, I have it reversed. They get Toronto first tonight, and then they play Ottawa Saturday. But they're going to Ontario all the same. They're going to go in Ontario in both cases. Anaheim is coming hot, though. 8-2-1 in their last 10. They have absolutely cooked in the NHL over the last couple of weeks or so. That's very impressive for the Ducks. And the Ducks team, like I said, with the great coaching that they've had, have really gotten their act in and acting together well. Good work on Anaheim's part. So what did they do, you ask? The answer being, they got shut out by the Blues, which I mentioned before. That's not great. But you surround that with a win against the Jets, cool. A win against the Canadiens, good. A easy win against the Islanders, which is also very good. They got waxed by the Avalanche, but a lot of teams will do that. But that's enough of that. Anaheim is looking better, and they're really just getting, I think, fine-tuned and ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs at this point. Can they keep the division lead, though? That's going to be the next challenge for the Ducks, now that they're kind of the hunted, if you will, as opposed to being the hunters. Duck hunt, if you will. Columbus, staying steady. Yes, Columbus is the one team that's not in the playoffs, that's ahead of Ottawa and the Flyers and the Capitals. And in the case of Columbus, it's, I guess, a simple question of can they hold it together? They're 6-1-3 in the last 10. Good stuff. Getting points in 9 of the last 10 games. You like to see that. Good stuff. They beat the Lightning on the road. It's a very good statement win. They got points against the Kings and the Mammoth. Good. That's something that you want to do. I like to see that. They do play the reigning Stanley Cup champions and the Flyers in the critical games this week coming up between Thursday and Saturday. Those are very high statement games that Columbus is going to need to stay ahead of both these teams. Can they do that, though? I guess we'll see. Boston, 2 Columbus games, as I mentioned before. Now, Boston's not playing them right away. They're going to play them once later this month and then once in April, both in Columbus. Those 2 games may determine who is the 8th seed and who's out of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's how big those games may be. The Bruins have been relatively steady as they go, and that's kind of what Boston generally is when they're at their best. They had no business losing to Pittsburgh on Sunday, but they found a way to. That was kind of wild. At least they came with the overtime. They're 5-2-3 in their last 10, which is fine. You live with that. It's that Penguin loss was kind of weird. It was very, very weird. They have played once since. They beat the Kings 2-1. They play the Sharks tonight as they deal with the California teams. Then, as I mentioned before, the Capitals and Devils come calling. Those are road games. And in Montreal, their ultimate ops in Montreal. We'll see if Boston's able to deal with the challenges there. Pittsburgh, working overtime. Yeah, they are taking care of business, if you will. I'm not going to sing the song for copyright reasons. And the Penguins have held it together relatively well without Crosby and Malkin. Crosby got hurt during the Olympics. Malkin got suspended for trying to beat Jason Voorhees. In any event, the Penguins have held it together to some degree, at least getting to OTs and just stacking some points together. They, in 3 straight games, have at least gotten that far. 2 of them went to shootouts. They lost both the shootouts. They did win the overtime game, though. They did do that. A challenge in Vegas awaits, but the Penguins are at least kind of sort of holding it together. Malkin's got 2 games left on his suspension. It was a 5-gamer. The first game was the Flyers. They lost that game with the shootout, thanks to Trevor Zegras doing his thing. They stole the Bruin game, and they lost to the Hurricanes on Tuesday night. Obviously, Malkin's going to be missing the Golden Knights game and the Mammoth game. Can they get him back for Colorado? And a rematch with the Hurricanes? I guess we'll see that. And Detroit, dual sport playoffs. Yep, it's not just the Red Wings. The Red Wings have been kind of sort of so-so over the last week or so, but they will actually be sharing the playoffs with the Pistons, as both teams should make it, and make it as relatively higher seeds. Good. They're really the only Eastern Conference team I can definitively say that for, where both the winter sports are going to make the playoffs. There's a couple Western teams I can say that about. I will get to them in titles here. But when it comes to this portion of the country, Detroit's really the best thing rolling in both winter sports here. 4-5-1 isn't great. Okay, fine. That's your last 10. Okay, cool. Losing to this year's Panthers twice, I don't recommend it. Well, losing to this year's Panthers twice, I don't really recommend it. The ESPN got to update this. Anyway, losing to the Golden Knights is also something I don't recommend either. I'm not necessarily great with that. Even though Vegas is a good team. Tampa Bay is a very good team and a challenge that will be very much intriguing for Detroit to see if they can get back on track. And then they get Dallas. Ooh, that's an ugly back-to-back game situation for Detroit. Can Detroit at least win one of these 2 games? That is the challenge I think that they're going to have to face. The Red Wings, anyway. The Pistons have their own issues. I'll talk about Detroit tomorrow. They will be entitled here. Anyway, speaking of which, we're going to Moynihan for, well, titles here. Montreal. Division is doable. The Atlantic Division is very close and very jumbled together, where the heavyweight teams, if you will, in said division are kind of really clogged in. Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Montreal, Detroit, all within 7 points. And actually, really, we can include Boston in this, 8 points. So a good week and a half, 2 weeks, and this can be entirely different. When it comes to Montreal, they have been very rock solid. They've won 3 straight, 6-1-3 their last 10. They have gotten it together and kept it together, and they've stayed really stable since the winter break. Everyone beats the Maple Leafs. You're supposed to do that. They also went through and beat Ottawa, so they got the Ontario sweep there, or at least facing them back-to-back. The Canadiens game with the Maple Leafs was at home. They also beat the Kings, which is also pretty solid, and gained a point against the Ducks. Good. A very good run of form where they're winning games and stacking points. They see the Sharks and then Ducks again this weekend. Let's see what they do against those teams before they face their ops in Boston. New York Islanders, the California Triangle. That's what they had to go through last week when they had to face all 3 Cali teams and do what a lot of Eastern Conference teams tend to do, which is fly out to California and knock out the 3 California teams all in a row. And in this case, the Islanders' journey through Cali started in Anaheim, and they got waxed. Not great. Then they went a little bit north, and they faced the Kings, and got waxed. Also not great. And now they face the Sharks. They go the most northern of the 3 Cali teams, obviously, and they won. They won in overtime. Good. I recommend it. Flying back east, and they faced the Blues and also won in overtime. So, 2-2. Okay, fine. They go home, and now they face one of those Cali teams and the Kings tomorrow night. And we'll see if they can get their lick back against Los Angeles, and then see if they can mop up against a couple of Canadian teams in the form of Calgary and Toronto. We'll see if they can mop those up against those 2 zombie tier teams. Good on you Islanders for getting it back together after those first 2 games in Cali where it was not great. And you could not keep up with the 2 LA/Orange County based teams. Tampa Bay basically canceled out. That's effectively what the Lightning's week was. They had a 5-2 win and they had a 5-2 loss. And okay, fine, cool. You're 1-1 there. And then there was fight night in Buffalo. And they lost 8-7. So, okay, sure. That's technically not canceling out. Obviously, you can't cancel out with 3 games. But at the very least, that's effectively what this was. And for Tampa Bay, they're stable, I guess. They've stabilized a little bit. Yes, they've lost 2 straight. Yes, they've gone 4-6 their last 10. But the Lightning are still in very good shape. And they, I think, are going to be perfectly fine as long as they keep it together. They have a couple of showdown games coming up with the Red Wings, as I mentioned, and then the Hurricanes, as I will mention, coming up in these rankings. But Tampa Bay is in really good shape and can still win a division, obviously. I am looking forward to the rematch they have with the Buffalo Sabres after the mayhem that was this past Tuesday, where it was fight night in Buffalo. Looking forward to the rematch. They will run it back on April 6th in Buffalo again. I'm, again, looking forward to that. Carolina, trap, then showdown. That's what effectively the next 2 games feel like when it comes to the Hurricanes. Yes, they're leading their division. Yes, they have mowed through their last 10, 8-2 in that stretch. Great work. They also play the Blues next, who are not good, as I've mentioned many times. And then that aforementioned Lightning game, which could be an Eastern Conference Finals preview, as far as we can tell, between the 2 Eastern elements and Eastern heavyweights. Can Carolina continue to keep this rolling as the Hurricanes continue to score a lot of goals and continue to do their thing overall? We shall see there. Buffalo, 1 fight night. Well, Buffalo's won a lot of games lately. They've won 8 straight. They've absolutely dominated teams. 8-1-1 in their last 10. They have absolutely terrorized the league. Maybe this is Pagula's revenge? I guess. I mean, they did sign Bradley Chubb, yesterday, which I don't love that. And they've managed their money well in Buffalo, but the Sabres have destroyed most, and in their case, they've just played better than most teams over this last stretch of this last run. The Capitals are an interesting test, and one of which that will not be easy for Buffalo, sure. And a game that the Capitals got to have tonight. Or does Buffalo just keep things rolling and keep things moving? Because they have just been a machine as of the last, the entire season, honestly. They've really been an absolute machine this whole year. A very impressive turnaround and renaissance for a Sabres team that needed it in the worst way. When they clinch that playoff spot, that's going to be like Christmas for a lot of Sabre fans. That they are finally back in the postseason. And they will have earned it, to be honest. I guess the only question left is, can they get the 1 seed in the East? It's in play. Let's go west and go to the Central for the last 3 teams mentioning here. Minnesota somehow lost ground. That's shocking to think, but it's the truth. That team went 7-2-1 in their last 10. They did win their last game. Everything is rolling for the Wild. They're moving well, except they lost to the Avalanche in the shootout. I didn't mention it yet, but I was going to anyway. They got a statement win against the Lightning even. But they somehow lost ground because the 2 teams in front of them are just ridiculous. Minnesota is going to be fine. They're obviously going to be, at worst, the 3 seed in the central portion of the playoffs before a fight to the death with Colorado or Dallas. Probably Dallas. But it's the fact that they lost ground and are as hot as they are is absolutely absurd. They play the Flyers tonight. And then the Rangers and then the Maple Leafs and the Blackhawks. They have, it's on the board, the Blackhawks twice. It's on the board that they go, of these 5 games, it's on the board they get 4 of them, and at the very least, 8 of the 10 points in play before a showdown with the Stars. That's a crazy, crazy run of form for Minnesota, and I kind of expect them to keep going, to be honest. Dallas, dominant, but second. That's what the Stars are kind of in a similar spot as the Wild are, to be honest. They're not that far ahead of Minnesota. Matter of fact, they're only a game ahead in terms of points, you could say. They have 90 to the Wild's 87, so they have 3 points ahead. But Dallas also dominant. They have not lost in regulation in the last 10. They're 9-0-1. They have been incredibly good. Their one loss is to the one team I haven't mentioned yet. That's how good the Stars have been, and yet they can't catch up to the team that's in front of them. It's crazy. It's wild, isn't it? These are your 3 best teams in hockey, and the fact that one of them is going to go out round 1 is absolutely absurd. The fact that the Wild, Stars, and Avalanche are that great, and still one's out round 1. Absolutely insane. Speaking of the Avalanche, they are number 1, and they've earned their right to stay as such. Undisputed best team. I mentioned last week they had 2 heavyweight showdowns. The Avalanche did. One against the Stars, one against the Wild. They won them both. Needless to say, the Avalanche have proven themselves worthy the entire season as the best team in hockey. Sure, they're 7-3-1 in their last 10, so technically worse record than the previous 2 teams I've just mentioned. But you beat them both. One of them on the road. I cannot disagree. I cannot hate on this at all. Back-to-back against those 2 squads over the weekend, and you handled it. And you beat a good Ducks team right before that. So I can't even get mad at this. The Avalanche are the number 1 team in the league, and they have proven themselves as such. Even with the Edmonton loss, and even that game went to a shootout. So there's not much you can say here. You just got to tip your cap and say, Colorado, you're going to probably win the President's Trophy, and we'll go from there and see if Colorado can get their second cup in 5 years. We shall see. There you have it. That's the NHL Power Rankings. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to shift it to the NBA. We're going to change over from ice to hardwood with the NBA Power Rankings. The top 3 are as such. They will remain as such, even though Boston is trying to make a dent, and they've got a real shot to. Denver's also looking like a pretty good team. We'll see if the Nuggets can make a dent in the top 3 of the Power Rankings. Although San Antonio and Oklahoma City, I think, have established themselves as the top 2 teams in the NBA. As for the bottom, you already know what time it is. Sacramento, you're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.